wasn't just about the fact that I wanted to lose weight, and it is amazing for weight loss, but also I sort of was approaching 50 and I thought, gosh, I need to take care of my health and think about that. So I discovered HBD. So I started creating recipes, and Petronella got in touch and said, you're making HBD a little bit more accessible to people. Would you like to come on to a live with me on Instagram, which I did. You can take simple ingredients and you can really inject amazing flavour into them, just with like fresh herbs and spices. It's not about deprivation, really. It's about retraining yourself not to overeat. In terms of the eating and the food and that side of things, I think I've got two tips really.
Hi, I'm Caroline Cary and welcome to the Eat, Nourish, Love podcast. For over 20 years, I've created events, raised over 4 million for good causes, and been lucky enough to meet some incredible people along the way. This podcast is about exploring stories and insights that really shape us, with inspiring guests from wellness, business, self-care and personal growth. It's about learning to trust our intuition and discovering what truly matters, and how, with hard work, belief and tenacity, we can make so many things happen. So I'm really excited to welcome our next guest onto the Eat, Nourish, Love podcast today. And there is a very funny story. So Elisabeth Whiting, who has written the most unbelievable books and is literally in the middle of doing another one for HarperCollins and the HBD diet. Lizzie, welcome to the podcast today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.
And I'd love the listeners to have a little bit of a background on you, and then I'll tell the funny story. So how did this all come about with Petronella?
And so it all came about 3 years ago. I had basically been very busy for a long time raising a big family, and I realised I needed to sort of take myself in hand. And I discovered through a friend of mine this amazing thing called the human being diet. And I kind of felt that I just needed to, it wasn't just about the fact that I wanted to lose weight, and it is amazing for weight loss, but also I sort of was approaching 50 and I thought, gosh, I need to take care of my health and think about that. So I discovered HBD, and at that time we were given a list of ingredients and we were sort of told this is what you need to be eating and this is when you need to be eating it. And I decided I needed to make it really delicious because I needed to stick to it. And it grew from there really. So I started creating recipes, and Petronella got in touch and said, you're making HBD a little bit more accessible to people. Would you like to come on to a live with me on Instagram, which I did. We got on like a house on fire. She's amazing, and kind of the rest is history, really. It's grown from there, and it's been amazing. It's been a whole new chapter for me, for my life.
Well, it's extraordinary actually, because I don't know quite how I got onto it with Petronella, but I think like all these things, it's not just always about weight. It's actually about resetting your food and your clock and your biorhythms and everything else with food. And I think that, yeah, it does have the word diet in it, but it's not a diet. It's a life skill, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really understanding.
Totally. And Petra always says, actually, the word diet in her context of HBD isn't diet as in dieting. Diet actually is just what we eat. You know, you'd say, do you have a vegetarian diet? That doesn't mean that you're doing it for weight loss. It's just because that's what you eat. So yes, I think it's a bit deceptive because for years we've always said, "Oh, I'm on a diet." So it sort of assumes that you're living in this place where you're eating leaves and that's it. But actually, it's not. It's about the way we eat and our relationship with food.
And I think that's what we're losing more and more, particularly with what's going on. And I'm not suggesting that the wonderful drugs that have helped so many people at the moment, because they've been lifesavers, but actually, it's not. It's often not. Well, I find losing weight quite hard, but people always say it's not losing weight. It's actually, or it's not getting yourself into the right shape or on the right, how you feel, but it's how you stay there and how you keep that discipline. And I think that what we don't realise is that actually by eating a food in a certain combination, or the food that you're eating, actually makes you hungry, and it's not you that's overeating. It's the whole hormonal and the whole imbalance of the insulin levels and everything else that's actually making you have this hunger, this huge hunger, because we're not putting the right food in at the right time in the right sort of proportions, etc. But first of all, I'm just going to tell the listeners today how we met.
Such a good story.
Oh, it is hilarious. So Petronella and I met, and we were going to meet, and then we never got to meet. But actually, she had this wonderful launch that I was invited to, and it was absolutely, it was again a beautiful hot day. We went to that lovely Ricardo's restaurant. It's the Fulham Road, isn't it? The top of the
Yes,
Fulham Road, yeah.
Fulham Road, exactly.
Right at the top there, and it's been there for years. Absolutely wonderful restaurant owned by her husband, and anyway, so I popped in and dropped in, and there were a few people that I knew there, and then I came around the table, and you were sitting next to me, and like all these things, I sort of pop in here, pop in there. So I said, "Oh, so why are you here?" You looked at me as if to say, "You're probably in one of the hottest seats in the room." Sitting next to me.
And that's my name on the front of the book. I remember saying that to you. Well, this is who I am.
This is who I am. On the front of the book, I was thinking, oh God, I've done it again.
It was a brilliant moment. I do things like that all the time, and I think it's great. And that was it. We were firm friends after that. Because,
So that was it. And I've got to tell you another funny story. Actually, my husband has often dined out on. That I was God, I'm trying to remember his name now. Anyway, I was oh God.
You've forgotten his name again, haven't you? Whoever it was.
Yes. Anyway, I'll remember, but we'll come back.
Yeah,
We'll
tell
come
me
back
later.
to that one. We'll come back to that one, because again, it's like that memory is all over the place at the moment. So now you're in the middle of doing another cookbook.
So we are. So the whole thing's really grown, and like we were saying before, for me, it wasn't just about weight loss when I sort of embarked on all of this. I was hitting 50, and I had that whole brain fog thing, which we're talking about, and you know, my cortisol levels were all over the place, and I was quite an anxious person. And what's happened from all of this is we've grown. So I've grown a whole new career, really, and we've the human being diet itself is made up of a number of different phases. So our first book tackles the reset, which is the first 16 days, which is kind of the most hardcore part of it, but is brilliant because you really feel it's a really good boot camp, really, for how we've always eaten. You know, it really gets you into some really good habits, and it's a proper it really cleanses you, and then and that's normally known as the reset. It's the phases 1 and 2, and then you go into a more prolonged phase of HBD when you sort of really correct some bad eating habits, and you reintroduce new foods to see how your body reacts to it, because you become a lot more sensitive because you're taking all the crap out of your diet, so you can really tell what works for you and what doesn't. And that's phase 3, otherwise known as burn, and that can last typically around 10 weeks. So the latest cookbook is the HBD Burn Cookbook, and which is completely complements the HBD Reset Cookbook.
And you've also created a journal, haven't you?
Created a
journal. You've got your wonderful journal that you did.
So the journal's brilliant because you can, and I would really recommend it to people who are completely new to HBD. It really helps because I tend to do a reset once a year, and I always do it in January when there's nothing else going on. And I view it as sort of 2 weeks of self-care at home. And as a mother of 4, you know, I've always sort of come fairly low on the list of the priorities, you know, like sort of the goldfish and the dog and the cat come up before me. But for 2 weeks a year now, I go, no, hang on a second, guys. I'm going to have long baths. I'm going to have my food in the fridge that no one else is allowed to have. And I'm just going to have some self-care. And it really does, you know, set you up for the rest of the year. But the first time you do it, it can be quite terrifying. And I was really quite frightened because I'm a really, you know, I'm quite a greedy person. I love food, and I was terrified of being hungry all the time. And that's really quite natural. And actually, there were none of these companions available when I did my first reset and first embarked on it all. But now we've got them. They're amazing tools. And you can write down, you know, the emotional side of eating, which I think is a massive issue for many, many people. You can write down what your triggers are, you know, when you suddenly get hungry, why you need more comforting food and when you need it, that kind of thing, and what works for you. And and what you do when you're tired, and have you drunk enough water, and so on, and how much plant-based food are you eating, and you can journal it all as you're going along in that 2-week period of self-care. And then every time you reset thereafter, and you're only allowed to do it every year or 9 months to a year, you can refer back to it and go, oh yeah, that's why I feel the way I feel, or oh, I remember this from last time. And I think it's a really good thing for everyone to be able to have. We're trying to change our food noise in our heads, and we're trying to eat in a different way, and we're also different. It's such a personal journey for each person, so having your own personal journey, I think, is great. So we've also got that. Yeah.
I think there's a lot, something Dominic Ludwig talked about as well. There's a lot of food noise, and and I was talking about it earlier today with some guys who are working with Dr. Louise Newson and hormones. There's so much noise out there, and I think it's so helpful, but actually it's becoming now going the other way because people are just lost,
Yeah.
And I think this is Katie Brendel on the last podcast was saying, suddenly chocolate's all right for you this week. No, it's not week. You can have 1 square, you can have 2 square. No, you can have a glass of red wine. Oh, don't have a glass of red wine with the chocolate because that doesn't absorb properly. Oh no, don't have berries with yogurt. You've got to have yogurt before that and fruit after this. And it goes on, and it's like, so you go to the fridge and you go, all these voices are, when you open that fridge, it's like, oh, should I have my berries with my yogurt now? Because someone's just told me I shouldn't have berries with my yogurt. And so suddenly it's like, just give me the cake or give me the brownie, because suddenly you can't cope. And I really notice that my triggers, and I've done quite a lot of the fasting side because I've always been quite interested in fasting. And suddenly when I'm suddenly thinking I'm fasting and I go to have something, I realise, what is it? Why are you going to the kitchen now? Why are you going to eat something? And it's often because I'm doing something at work and I'm stuck. And I don't know how to get past that moment. I've got to, I'm doing something on a spreadsheet and and it's like, you go there to change to change something. And it's not because I'm hungry. It might be because I'm bored, and sometimes it's because I'm tired. And so often I am tired, and it's time to just lie down on the floor or go lie down in the bed or do something like that. But it's a big guilt thing about stopping and just sitting and doing nothing.
Just exactly. And that is why. So I think there comes a time where you have to pin your colours to the mast of something, right? Because as you say, there's so much food noise there. What I liked when I did HBD is what I liked about it is it's completely natural. It's based really on the Mediterranean diet, which is long proven and tested to be super healthy and brilliant for you, and it's delicious, the ingredients. So and it made sense, and it's logical, and it's natural. So those were the reasons why. So I think it's important to sort of make a decision and try and stick to one thing. And then in terms of your personal reasons for eating, your triggers, is it because, like you say, boredom eating is huge for lots of people. They literally don't even realize it. They drift towards the fridge, and before they know it, they've eaten something, they haven't even tasted it. And that was me completely. And so actually the reset phase is a really important phase because it's when you start really thinking deeply about that. And one of the pieces of advice that I was given was 2 things really actually were absolutely, really invaluable. And one of them was, if in doubt, just go and walk around the block. If you're like, oh God, I feel so hungry, I could actually eat the dog, I'm like so starving. Actually, break the cycle of the whole thing. Just go and walk to the letterbox at the end of the road and walk back again. And guess what? Most of the time, you're fine again. You're not hungry, or have a glass of water.
Yeah.
And the other one, of course, is emotional eating. And I think I certainly fell into that trap. I was at home with 4 children, and I had 3. I mean, it was an amazing story, really. I had my daughter. We really struggled to have children, and you have to be careful what you wish for, because I had my daughter. It was a lot of IVF to have her, and then we went for a sibling, and we had twins. And then when the twins were 6 months old, I thought I had a tummy bug, and actually I was 12 weeks pregnant with my son.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
I know. And it was amazing. And I'm so blessed, and so lucky. But I turned into literally the old woman that lived in the shoe. I just didn't know what to do. It was survival mode for many, many years. And, it was definitely comfort was a really, really big part of it for me, food, and rosé, I have to say as well. So it's about retraining and regulating and understanding why you do things.
So I know we've spoken about it before with Petronella, so just talk to us about the phases of the HBD.
So you've got absolutely, you've got phases 1 and 2, which is the reset. And in phase 1, it's only for 48 hours for your life. But basically, it's a proper cleanse. So you're allowed vegetables and you're allowed stocks and broths. And that might sound like pretty radical to a lot of people, but actually, and this is where I come in, hopefully, you can make it really easy. You can do things like make yourself a batch of soup. You don't have to be like an elitist cook or anything, I promise. But you just get some good chicken broth and you can put in some spices and some butternut squash and whiz it all up, and you can have that, you can have salads, you can have avocado. So for 48 hours of your life, you kind of know, yeah, I mean, delicious. And it whizzes past. Honestly, it really does. And coleslaws, we've got some nice homemade slaws and things that you can have. But that really resets you. I don't profess to be a nutritionist. I don't speak about the nutrition side because that's Petronella's life's work. And she's like, obviously amazing. But I can tell you what I know as the person that's done it many times and who really believes in it. And that is, you don't really get hungry. And the other point about the first phase is you can eat as much as you want when you want. So you can have a mug of homemade soup, a mushroom soup or this soup or whatever it is on the go. And if you do it over a weekend, for me in the winter, boom, you're fine. A Netflix series, you're on your way.
Yeah.
And then you go into the next phase, which is for 14 days, which is when you reintroduce protein. So you have exactly the same basis, but you also have protein, and you eat these meals in a regular way 3 times a day with a 5-hour window between each meal, and you have nothing but water in between. But I ended up eating more because I was eating 3 times a day. I wasn't waiting till I was starving and then grabbing some crap thing mid-morning. You're properly eating. And breakfast doesn't have to be a big deal. It can be a handful of walnuts and a handful of raspberries, or it's
her breakfast, my favourite breakfast. I mean, because I've often skipped breakfast for many years, and then when I did it and I grated the apple with the pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds, I mean, I literally would bring it in here and sit on the beanbag, and no one could just disturb me to this delicious breakfast. And it was like, it was such a treat. I know it sounds silly, doesn't it? But it was such a treat.
No, it doesn't, because actually the other point that really happens is that your palate changes. So the moment you take all this processed food is really bad for us. We all know that. And the moment you take out the processed food, so the stock cubes and the stuff with all the additives, actually your palate you become much more fine-tuned. So things like your daily apple, which is compulsory, I always keep mine in the fridge and I really thinly slice it, and it's like a ritual.
Yes.
And it's delicious.
Yes.
And you would it's the sweetest thing you'll ever taste because you're not having any refined sugar. And I know it sounds a bit poncy, but it's true. Everything just, your palate just goes, wow. Frozen grapes is another favourite one of mine in that period of time because you're allowed fruit. And, you freeze them and take them out a few minutes before you want to eat them. And they go literally like little pops of sorbet. And you can sit and you've had your supper and you just have a few of those. So you redevelop a love of some really beautiful flavours in that period as well. So it's not about deprivation, really. It's about retraining yourself not to overeat.
I think it's really interesting because you just used the word love. And I think we have to remember that so often, because of all the noise, we've fallen out of love of food. And, there's nothing better to getting all the family here, and you're cooking in the kitchen and everybody's around dipping food into this and everything else, and actually but whether it's crudité and hummus or whatever, all that's such lovely food, and we've that's been such an important part. I went to Prilly, so I was a cake cooked, and I love food and everything else, so it's always been a huge part of my life. But then suddenly food has become the enemy, and I think you said this in the intro of one of your books. Suddenly the love of food, but suddenly it became the enemy, and I think that's really sad.
I totally agree. It should be joyful. And, we have to go back in time. Before they had antibiotics and medicines, food was your medicine. And that's the other way of reframing it in our own minds. It's our friend. It's not our enemy. Yes, sure, processed food and what we're now doing, sadly, for mass production has made it the enemy in lots of ways, because a lot of food is not good for us anymore. But if you just pare it right back, and it doesn't have to costs huge amounts of money. The things you can do, let me tell you, with a butter bean that obviously now I know. I've been working with Petronella and with the larder, but you can take simple ingredients and you can really inject amazing flavor into them just with like fresh herbs and spices, and it's utterly delicious. And if you have the knowledge as well that it is really boosting your health, and I think also the other point to mention is no one's getting any younger, and we need to look after ourselves, and food is a really basic and really simple, the most basic way of being able to do that.
Yeah. One of the things actually I found quite hard, I've just gone back to it, is I think maybe because I did the fasting, I've always been quite a coffee drinker, and I found not being able to have the coffee sort of when I wanted to, that it was with a meal. Because isn't that right? You have to have it with the meal or after the meal, whatever. You can't have it, so you have that break. So because it's giving your whole body a rest, isn't it? It's that rest time is so important.
It's so important because I mean, it really is, and it's all to do with your insulin spikes. I mean, again, I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not Petronella, but I can feel the benefits of it, obviously, from the other side of the coin. And it is funny, you really quickly adapt. You have an eating window of an hour. So for me, I would wake up in the morning and I would get a couple of coffee. I mean, I'm a big coffee drinker like you. And I get a couple of coffees in, and then I'm busy and I keep myself busy. And then you can have some more at lunchtime if you want to, and decaf in the evening. But yeah, it's changing the habits, and I think I remember when I had all my babies, and a couple of them were really colicky. And the advice I was given by a midwife was you had to space their feeds because they had to fully digest one thing before you gave them something else. Otherwise, that's why they got a bit colicky. And as I say, this is not science, but in my own sort of down to earth, logical way, I think the same thing applies to us as we become older. I think it's a really good habit to get into, that you fully digest and appreciate and eat one meal and one intake before you move on to the next one. And that's how I sort of frame it in my mind. And also you make more of an event of your meal times because you're not snacking. So you are really quite hungry by the time you get to lunch or by the time you get to supper. And so you really look forward to it and you enjoy it. And I always,
Yeah.
you
You
do.
look forward
look
to
forward
it,
to it.
yeah. So you've got the 2 days of and Epsom salts come in at some point at the beginning.
Say again, what was that?
Epsom salts come in at the beginning, don't they? Do you do that?
Epsom
Yeah.
salts at the very beginning, which you do on the first day, which is just a sort of added cleanse, really.
2 days of veg.
And that's not 2 days of veg and stocks, and you can have as many, as much of that as you want, and fresh herbs and spices and stuff. And then you reintroduce the protein for the next 14 days, but no olive oil. So you've got to learn a different way of cooking, and that's what the HBD Reset Cookbook teaches you, how to do all of that. And then after that 16-day period, you go into the next phase, which is called burn. And I love it because you know what Petronella's like. She's got a wonderful turn of phrase, and she's like, "My darling," because you're burning through all your bad habits, and you're burning through all everything you need to reestablish your baseline, I think, and your relationship with food. And then that phase is a lot easier because suddenly you're allowed to have extra virgin olive oil only, but you can make things crispy again, and you can make lovely dressings again. And you can also reintroduce things like beetroots and sweet potato, and you're even allowed a little bit of dark chocolate. But the most cool thing, I think, is you're also allowed, and in fact it's compulsory, you have to have a treat meal once a week.
Yeah.
And I think for two reasons. One, because it kickstarts your metabolism again. Also, in fact, three reasons. You reintroduce food in your treat meal and see how it sits with you. So I had no idea. But actually wheat really doesn't work for me and really doesn't suit me. But because I was eating so much crap, really, I suppose, leading up to it, I didn't know what was making me feel, what was triggering my IBS, what was making me feel tired or achy. And, I had terrible inflammation in my joints having carried 4 babies. And being the age I was, and I didn't know what was causing it. And the great thing about the treat meal is you can reintroduce it. So you can get, okay, I'm going to have, I don't know, pizza for my treat meal this week. And then you see how you feel, see how your body reacts. And because you basically created a kind of baseline pure, your body is detoxed from all this stuff. When you reintroduce it, you realize, and some things have been absolutely fine. I can eat cheese, I can eat nightshades, but wheat is my Achilles heel. But what I do now is I still eat wheat because occasionally it's the most delicious thing, and I really want a bowl of pasta, but I know I'll pay for it slightly and I'll stop again because I don't want to feel crap. I want to be energized and feel good and have the not have the brain fog. Really, I think that's a big thing. For me, certainly the brain fog and the anxiety, which just came back as my inflammation levels rose.
I think the other thing, what I noticed particularly when I came up to the lunch and met so many people was the community. Gosh, it's a strong
Yeah,
community, isn't it?
it really is. Because it's women helping other women, mainly. I mean, there are some gorgeous men there, and we're very lucky. But I think we all have the same challenges in life, and we all. And I love the way women can really be your champions and cheerleaders, and it has made such a difference to so many people. This is the other thing. When I first joined her, the work Petronella's done and the community she's built of people is because it's game changing, and it has changed. For me, it's completely transformed my life, but there are thousands of people that can say the same. And, I know she's very proud of that, and she should be.
Yeah, she's such a lovely person. Honestly, I
Yeah.
just, I just resonated with. She was terribly. She was very sweet actually because when she came onto the podcast with me and she said, I was asking her these questions, and she said at the end because I was a bit sort of terrified because and she said, "You do ask the best questions, you really do." And she came back to me. She said, when I met her, she said, "I really do." And I thought, "Oh, that's good." And do you know something? Sometimes just someone saying that to you, it doesn't matter what it's about, whether it's to do with food or to do. It's all a confidence thing, isn't it? Because
Yes.
it's really interesting because a lot of us don't do things because we're the fear, the ego, who we are, but actually, does it really matter? Someone said on a podcast the other day, we're all going to die. So why don't you
Yeah.
just enjoy it? And that doesn't
Yeah.
mean to say that, you go on eating a load of rubbish because actually you want to have quality of life. So I think it's always a balance of that. What I want to go on to a little bit is that I want to know how HarperCollins got involved and the cookbook and how easy, difficult that's been for you.
Yeah. Well, it's been a massive challenge. So basically, as we've already established, Petronella was very established with HBD when I came on board, but we got on like a house on fire, and she's like, "Darling, you do the food and I'm going to do all the science." And that's what we've done. And we've built a fantastic relationship. And a lot of my recipes have already been tried and tested because she involved me with her HBD Club, which is an online
Yeah.
private members sort of subscription thing. So I've been doing a weekly recipe or food blog for her for that. And so I was building confidence because you got to understand, I hadn't worked for 20 years. I had literally been raising children. I've been a
What
dinner
did you do
lady.
before?
So I went to art school originally,
Yeah.
and then so I worked as a textile designer
Yeah.
and an illustrator, and then realized there wasn't very much money in it. So I ended up working for an IT company, which was completely alien and not who I am, but I was on the business side,
Yeah.
and I ended up running like £4 million accounts. I had a great time, and it was a brilliant career. But then we struggled to have children, and so that sort of went out the window. And then so I was transformed from being one day driving around in a cool car and in a little suit to suddenly literally had all these babies. And I loved every second of it, don't get me wrong. But what you find is when you're when you're caring for so many people, is you do neglect yourself and you don't care. When you're in the moment, I was really happy. I would waft around in, big dresses and babies on hips and everywhere. And because I had four and I was already kind of in it, I would have everyone else's kids and they would all pile in, and I loved every second of it. But then you do wake up one day and go, oh my God, not only have I sort of lost my looks in a way, but I've also lost my confidence and my
Yeah.
ability to do these things. And the first
Right.
meeting I had at HarperCollins, I remember going into that office thinking, holy mackerel, this is really terrifying. What am I going to contribute here? But within 5 minutes of opening my mouth, I realized two things: that actually, as an older person, actually you do have a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge in there, but it's a question of trying to get it all out. And HarperCollins themselves have been phenomenal. They've been working with Petronella, and they had approached her and said, "We'd like some more cookbooks. Who would you want to work with?" And she said that she wanted to work with me, and that was amazing. So we went and spoke to them and saw them in that first meeting, and they said, okay, we're thinking of perhaps the forever phase, which is when you finish phases 1, 2, and 3, or reset and burn, how you can continue with HBD in a normal life. And I said to P, look, I've done it. I'm a punter here, and I really think the resets, the key reset and phase 3 burn are the two trickier areas to navigate when you're coming into it fresh. And so we pitched that to them, and they said, oh, we love that idea. And then Petronella had the idea of doing the journal.
Yeah.
So we've written all three in the space of the last year. And
so you've written the journal and the cookbook. So you've done this one. Yes, so
that was the original. That's the original cookbook.
That's the original cookbook. This is your book.
That is our book.
This is what you say. This is me. This is who I am, Caroline.
That is me. That's what I said. So those are all my recipes in those books, which, as I say, have been tried and tested in the club as well. Yeah. So, which gave me that kind of confidence. And I don't know if you've got a copy of the journal there, but the HBD Reset book and the journal were released in April.
Yeah.
And with Waterstones and Amazon and stuff, and it's been amazingly well received, which has been really gratifying. Because I have to say, I mean, asked some of my close friends, I was like, this is all well and good, but what if it's going to be reviewed by people? Suddenly I have to be accountable. You've got somebody amazing, an amazing publisher like HarperCollins that is investing in you, and so I had imposter syndrome really, really badly for a long time, and in fact, it still comes and sort of slaps you around the chops sometimes, but the more you do it, the more you realize, it goes back to your point you made earlier, why the hell not? If why not me? There are other people out there doing all sorts of interesting things, and living with the fear factor of failure doesn't really do anyone any favors.
No, it doesn't. And do you know something? I slightly understand that, because I do recipes on my website, and probably there's not particularly good for all of your stuff, but I did a chia seed. So we did the launch party of the E&R Collective, and I did this chia seed pudding, and I said to Lexi, who does Manuka honey, I said to her, would you send me a pot of honey? I'll do a few recipes while we do this launch day. So we did these protein balls with her honey, and I made these chia seed puddings. Anyway, so I just put it together and threw it together, and then popped the recipe on the website. And then she said, well, I'm going to publish it on my cards. I'm going to put it on my cards and have them printed. And I went, right. So I literally ran back to the kitchen, started measuring out and checking, does it work? I did that one. Did I put that in? And did it coconut milk? I might do this, which one? And eventually I did mention to her, yeah, it's actually really good. She said, it's absolutely delicious. And then she made it for a lunch party, whatever. But I mean, that was just one recipe, which is like 3 ingredients. So I don't know how you do what you do. Yeah.
It is a lot of work for sure. And like you say, I've always been an instinctive cook. So I've done courses. I'm not professionally trained, but I'll cater someone's, parties with 100 people, and it has never bothered me. I've never been fazed by it, but I've never really weighed anything. And so suddenly when they said, okay, we want for the first book 80 recipes, that you have to, really, you have to weigh the water, how many milliliters of this and how many. It's a whole new world. It was such a big learning curve. And of course, I hadn't done any IT for years when I'd been at home, being the old woman that lived in the shoe. And I hadn't done any social media. I had 6 followers on Instagram when all this started. So you have to self-teach yourself all this new stuff. But it's so invigorating. It gives you really leads into the fact that we've all got a new chapter in us. And I think it's really important to not lose faith in that. And there were a long time I did. I think a lot of women do. We get lost and buried. But actually, the moment you get out of your comfort zone and go, okay, I'm going to put my big girl's pants on. I'm going to walk into the News International building with HarperCollins, and I'm going to sit in the meeting, and I may have to pretend that I know what I'm talking about for 10 minutes, but it comes back to you, and it really does sort of wake you up. It's just a wonderful feeling.
I can't remember the exact quote and what it is, but I think my daughter's always said, that when men go into interviews, they are asked for more money, but they also go in, and are able to blag their way through a lot more and give themselves much more credit for possibly what they can't do than women. Women will always well, they will always no, they will, what's the word I want to say, but they
Undersell, underplay their
undersell, exactly,
talents. Yeah.
undersell, underplay their talents. And I don't know what it is and why it is and where the history of it, but it's a typical gene in females, and that's why, investing and funding and everything else. This is such a big one. I mean, I do things for my collective is not just for females; it's for men as well. But the female founders, and I'm a huge female supporter. I think I'm a huge feminist, and I think we need to improve that hugely.
Me too.
But I and I do it. I sit there and worry about whether I can deliver something, and you're talking to a man and you think, can I deliver that? And it is hard. It is hard. You have to learn new skills, don't you?
You have to learn new skills, and I think, and I think you have to think to yourself. There was a brilliant quote, and it was about the boats in the harbour. You build a beautiful ship and you keep it in the harbour because you keep it safe in the harbour. But actually, it wasn't designed to sit in the harbour where it's perfectly safe and people can admire it. It's admired to, it's designed to go out and conquer the world and go out into the big seas. And I think, I don't know. I think it's an educational thing. I mean, I know a generational thing, perhaps, the way we were raised, but we were sort of taught that that wasn't territory for a lot of women, and actually, screw that, really. I mean, we are we don't have, the nice thing about working, and I work predominantly with women now, is that most women don't have egos. They are really just that. We are there all to lift each other up and champion each other and support each other. And the job I had prior to having children, it was very male dominated. And, I had to doubly, triply prove myself because they just put me they pigeonholed me as being a certain way because of how I looked and because of my sex. And, the times of those, we have moved on so much.
Exactly. And I think the thing that I've always said is that in terms of we obviously go through the puberty, etc., and then maybe you'll get married, so you change your name, so you change your identity, so you've lost that identity. Then you have, if you're lucky, you can have a child, and then your body changes, and so you have to bring yourself back. And then you have number 2 or 3, whatever. You go through that, and then you nurture all these children, particularly if you're at home or working, whatever. And then they all leave home, and then it's like, well, who am I? What is my role here? And then husband comes back and retires, and it's like, well, am I going to just sit here and just look after you? The next thing, so we have this time when we all have to reinvent. I think that's why we become stronger as we get older, because I think we have to learn this reinvention, and I think we have to learn these skills, and I think that's why you're seeing this big strength of women coming out now. Because
Totally.
do you agree? Yeah.
I totally agree. I completely agree. And I think it was really interesting because I had to go through surgical menopause. I had a hysterectomy when I was 50, which also kind of catapulted me into HBD because I realised that, once you've gone through something, it's very hard to lose weight, actually, when you're postmenopausal. But what was really interesting is that, we have estrogen. It's a fact of life. That's what differentiates us from men. One of the things it does. And the hormone estrogen it makes us, and it's just biological, consider others. It makes us much more nurturing, which is why women have it, because they nurture for the young. We carry the young. But it's really fascinating because when I went through what I went through, suddenly I didn't have any estrogen anymore. And I suddenly realised, oh my goodness, I have literally been thinking about everybody else. Wouldn't even have occurred to me to put myself first. I was always feeding everybody else. I was always looking after everybody else. And I think that happens for all of us. We go into sort of a menopausal stage and our estrogen levels dip, and we realise we're not just put on this planet to enable everybody else and care for everybody else. We've got other things to give, and we're freed to go and do that. And I think I certainly experienced that anyway.
So again, I'm just going to go back to, so what does the day look like when you're filming with at the moment?
At the moment is really exciting. So we are doing the food photography for the next book, and it's kind of still a bit nerve-wracking because all my recipes have gone over to HarperCollins and they've been through, they've checked them all over and everything else. But I've now got this team of people, a chef and a food stylist and a home economist. And, these guys have been doing this for a long time. And they are taking my recipes and cooking them and styling them and photographing them. And I have to be there to say, oh, no, we need a bit more of this or a bit less of that, or, obviously oversee the whole thing. And it's a huge privilege having your food cooked and displayed so beautifully by these wonderful people. There's a prop stylist and these amazing who chooses all the plates and the crockery and the cutlery. I mean, to be honest, it's been my dream job all of my life long. If someone had said to me 30 years ago, what would you like to do for a living? I would have gone, wow, I want to work in food. I'd love to do something creative. I'd love to create recipes. And I love the beauty side of it. Having been to art school, I still paint. So, and you go into this really zen studio and everyone's really happy in their work. It's really nice. Everyone's loving what they do. And at the end of it, you get to see all these beautiful shots. So I have got this week and next week doing that. So I race back from that today, our first day of the shoot. And then all of that will then go into the melting pot with all the recipes and all the introductions and the other writing that we've done for the book. And then we get to see the first draft, when that's really exciting, when you get to see that and it all starts coming together properly.
It's a beautifully designed book, isn't it? Do they do that? Who does the designing?
Yeah, there's a wonderful girl called Sarah, and she basically does the layout for us.
I know people can't see it listening, but I mean, just look at how beautiful these recipes are and how they're designed and the colours, and it's just such a joyful book to use, isn't it?
Well, that's what we wanted. So we had a lot of input, and actually, so all the colours of the book and the look and feel of it is been us. We have made it very clear how we would like it to look and feel, with the input from our amazing team. Katia Shipstead, our editor, is just unbelievable. So she takes the raw ideas and the recipes and what we give her, and she is the one that gives it the biggest glow up. And then Sarah does the formatting of it. So it's a real team effort. And we're so lucky to have them. They're an amazing team of brilliant women, actually. So yeah, that's the process.
And why do you think HarperCollins just said, yes, we want to do this? What was the theory behind that, do you think?
The theory behind that is because HBD is so successful, and they want to work with Petronella.
Yeah.
They love the idea that we can take it to another audience and that we can open it up to people that perhaps don't cook and who would be a bit overall, a little bit sort of frightened of embarking on it because they just don't know what they would eat. Whereas actually the Reset Cookbook holds your hand. You don't have to be a cook. It literally holds your hand through it and says, this is what you can have for each meal. And it's delicious stuff that anyone, whether you've got any cooking background or not, can easily create. And also you can make them into family meals too. So for people that are worried about a husband or children or other people in the household, though in every recipe it says, okay, you're going to eat this, but if you're feeding it to your family and friends, just add rice or just add cheese and sour cream, or depending on what the dish is. So we've really tried to broaden HBD to make it not an elite, sort of not a niche, quite hardcore thing, but actually something that's accessible so that everybody in your family can eat really super healthy, unprocessed, brilliant food with you. You're doing it in a more restrictive way, perhaps because you want to lose weight and they don't need to lose weight, or their children. So there are other ways that you can give them the benefit of the nutrition. But it doesn't involve spending hours in the kitchen. So that's what we've tried to do with these books.
What's the difference between the book that's coming out and the book that you've already written?
So the book that we've already written covers the reset, the first 16 days, the vegetables only and the no olive oil and all of that. And then the one that we've just written is to do with the next 10-week period, so the burn period. So it's just to do with the phases of HBD, really. And it will cover you, those two books will cover you for the first 16 weeks, yeah.
And where do you see your future going in terms of HBD?
Well, it's a very interesting question. We've been so busy. I mean, we've literally hit the ground running with all of this. We've done 3 books in a year. They've been very well received. We're having meetings. We haven't been able to even come up for air. And, we are hoping that there'll be, more books and that we'll be able to take this to a wider international audience will be our next step. But for now, we're literally still just creating the product, if you like, which is the books that we're doing.
So, and also, it's really interesting because I've had a conversation today about hormones and the fact that, everyone thinks hormones are all about, I think there's a lot of subject matters that's out there, um, menopause, wellness, there's a lot of labeling going on with things. And, hormones aren't just with us when we're through the menopause. Hormones are with us all our lives. So actually it's understanding hormone health for teenagers too. So it's actually looking at this whole spectrum. And I think what you're doing here, and they're looking at moving internationally as well. And I think with this is just about educating your systems, isn't it? And it's about, starting young. I mean, Lucinda Miller's done some amazing stuff where I can't believe this is baby food, and some of the lovely recipes that she's done for children, and getting out and understanding, people think, oh, you just drink lots of oat milk. It's still thing on the glycemic index, and these things. So I think it's not so much about diet, it's about education, isn't it?
Totally. And it's been a real eye-opener because my house is full of teenagers now, and I've had them lined up as my taste testers in all these dishes because two reasons really. One, they are brutally honest. They're not going to say it tastes delicious. They'll go, oh my God, what is that?
It's disgusting.
And second of all, yeah, it's disgusting. And second of all, I have to feed them. So I may as well as so I literally line them up and their mates and everybody else. But what has been really interesting, because there's stuff now that they love, that they go, oh, Mark, and you make in the new book, there's a recipe for prawn gyozas, which you use cabbage leaves and there's lemongrass and ginger and some other things. And it sounds complicated, but really easy to make. And they now ask me for this kind of food. And I think they've also noticed, particularly the younger generation, my daughters are now 19, my twins, and they're gym bunny, they're very fit, and they love food that makes them feel that they've got more energy. They don't want to be sitting having heavy Sunday lunches or, food that big spaghetti
Sunday lunches. I mean, it's like, I just don't think I've done Sunday lunches. And I just always remember that as a child, the Sunday lunches, it took all day doing the Sunday. And I love it. I don't get me. I leg of lamb in the oven. Gosh, absolutely wonderful. Yeah. But very happy to do it with salad or some couscous or whatever, rather than doing this big Sunday lunch. And actually, one of my children, it doesn't they reckon Sunday lunch is very overrated. So it's not about the roast lamb or the roast beef or the roast chicken. It's it was this whole culture, which was around the kitchen, which was fun because obviously it was that Sunday lunch, everyone getting together. But it's all changed so much, hasn't it?
It has changed, and it's because it's generational. So I think the younger generation, certainly in my experience, the ones that all live with me, it's brilliant. They're a lot more conscious of what they put into their bodies. I mean, we still have Sunday lunch in the winter and everybody loves it, but we kind of mix it up now, and we don't have like the rich gravies and Yorkshire puddings and, occasionally, wow, of course, but it's a different way of eating, and it is about educating them in that way. And I think, and they now choose stuff that is really, really good for them, instinctively almost. It's extraordinary.
How many people are part of the HBD groups, the Instagram and everything else?
Oh, wow.
Big.
Now you're asking me. I don't, big. There's, I don't know, off the top of my head. That's definitely a Petronella question, not a me question, but there is a big community, and it has a really, really big following, but we just need to make that grow now. And we need people that have experienced HBD already. Put it this way, I've never met anybody that has done HBD and have had a bad word to say about it in terms of what it's done for them in their life. And again, I'm not just talking about weight loss. Okay, it is extraordinary. You do the reset, and it's very unusual to find a way of losing. I lose about a stone every time I do a reset. And yes, that is a lovely quick fix to have up our sleeves, of course, but it's not about that. It's about all the non-scale victories. So I think people do bang the drum, but we need to get the word out there even more, I think, now.
Well, hopefully by just having you on the podcast and talking about it, it will reach some more people out there. But it's so funny. I remember the story now, so I remember the name. So I went to a dinner at Lord's in the Long Room, and Geoffrey Boycott was talking there. In fact, I did some work with Geoffrey many years ago. Anyway, and just beforehand, that there was a group of people standing around Stephen Fry, because it was organised by
God, I love Steve.
it was all people organised who were always at Oxford together. So, and I said to Richard, right, I'm just going to go and talk. Richard's my husband. I'm just going to say hello. So he said, what do you mean? I went, oh, just come on, not. He's standing there on his own. Just go and chat. So I said, hi. It's like, what do you say? Hi. How are you? And it's like, anyway, I can't remember what I said. And then a couple of other people there, and he introduced me to this one guy who was in the development of Apple, of iPads, and then someone else. I mean, really incredible. Someone who ran all the Apple iTunes, etc., and using iPads. And I looked at him, and then Richard came over and sort of said, sort of muscled in, sort of, hi, I'm Richard. And then I looked at him. I said, iPads. Do you think they'll ever take off? Anyway, a bit later on, Richard was sitting at dinner, and he said, what on earth made you say that? And I went, I've no idea. It's like completely away with Sarah's.
Yeah, no, we've all done it completely. I do a lot of that. I don't recognise people either. Although I have to say, so going back to my imposter syndrome story, one of the best moments of the last few years was I got invited to the HarperCollins Authors Party, which they hold once a year, and it's for people who are published that year. And I was still very much, oh my God, I can't really believe I'm here. This is really exciting. And I got in there, and you get your badge. And what's quite cool about it is there's no plus ones. So everyone's on their own. So everyone has to talk to each other. There's no cliqueiness about it. It's the senior HarperCollins people, agents and authors. That's it.
Yeah.
And there was a moment when the CEO of HarperCollins was up, and she was just doing a wonderful speech. She's an amazing woman. And I looked around, and I was standing there, and there was Jeffrey Archer, me, David Baddiel, Jeremy Lee, all like these iconic people, and me standing in the middle of them going, holy mackerel, holy smoke, how the hell am I here? It was such a cool thing. And that happened this year. And if I look back 3 years, I think, God, and just doing these little incremental steps and changes in your life. And for me, it was a decision just to eat more healthily. And look where it takes.
But look what it does, it opens doors. And I think that, so I'm doing this thing on the 30th of September, which I hope you're going to come to, which is at Benham Park, which is an amazing event with 8 incredible speakers and brands. It's a beautiful place. And Petronella sadly can't come to that, but because she's one of the ambassadors.
I'd love to.
Yeah, she's one of the ambassadors of what we're doing. And I was just talking to 1 or 2 people this morning, and I said, sometimes you do these things, but I'll never stop doing things. I just throw myself out there and go, oh my goodness, what have I done? What have I done now?
No, but good. That's it, isn't it? That's all we.
Well,
can
it's
do.
all we do. And someone said, well, what is it that you do? And I said, we always have to go down. What is it? What is the message? And I go, to inspire, engage, and bring people together. That's all I do. It's true. I do my fundraising, and then this podcast is all about belief, hard work, and tenacity can make many things happen. And I do believe I think sometimes it's the hard work with the belief, and then if you're tenacious with it, you can make many things happen. Everybody's waiting to believe in themselves. You've got to take action, and as you take action, you get more belief in yourself. And then you fall down, and the ship goes out of the harbour, and you're hit, and you capsize, and you go down, and it's how you then react to that, and who are the people around you that help you, get back in the lane and navigate down. And it's also the same old analogy of an airplane is never on track. It is always going off. It never is going from one destination to the other. It's always going left to right, etc. And it always has to be brought back in. And that's what our life's about. And it is a journey. When so many people go to that destination, they get there and they haven't really enjoyed the journey, even the bad times. And it's actually learning how to grow from those. And I think it's just such an important time.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I totally agree with everything you've just said. And, another girlfriend of mine always says to me, we can all be really fabulous in the good times, but the test of the person actually is when the shit hits the fan and when it's the bad times. And that applies to friendships, of course, as well. And who's there and who supports you and lifts you up. But it isn't about the final result. It's about the little stuff that we learn on our way, and a journey sounds like a bit of a cliche, but it's true. It's But it's, you know, it's one step at a time. It's one day at a time. That's all you can do. And just try and be the best version of you and get out of your comfort zone. You know, life does begin at the edge of your comfort zone. I know it's, again, another cliche. I am the queen of cliches today. But, you know, it's bloody true. It really is true. And the more you do, the more you realise that, you know, you can do it. I say to my kids when they can't sleep, I say to them that, do you know what you need to do when you go into bed every night? What you do is you go to bed and you pretend to go to sleep, don't you? You lie down, close your eyes, and you pretend you're asleep. And they go, yeah. And they go, well, that applies to life. You know, if you're having a bad day and you're in a bad mood, pretend to be happy. Guess what? Within half an hour, you start feeling better. Pretend. And I think it's what we tell ourselves is so important. You know, we've got to tell ourselves that we can do. It's a can-do attitude to life, that we can do. If, you know, it is in the same way as anybody else can. I mean, there are lots of things.
Yeah, totally. And actually, our lives can change in a second, in a day, in an hour.
Yeah.
Everything can change. And actually, you know, and I'm a great fan of Tony Robbins, who says, you know, change your state, get up, move around, go and change your state. Just like you said, you know, if you're hungry and you think you're going to go to that fridge, just go for a walk, go to the post box and everything else. But what I think that the whole summary of what we just talked about is the summary of HBD and what you guys are doing. So I think you've done incredible work for people, and thank you for producing these amazing books. I think it's going to do people so much, it's going to help people so much. And the next one, and I can't wait to see you again. Ask why I'm sitting next to you again.
I know. Well, at least we'll know who each other are this time. There is that. We've got a head start
Exactly.
this time.
So before we leave, can you leave our listeners with 3 tips or 3 things that they can remember from this conversation?
From this conversation, okay, so I think tip for me, number 1 is life does begin at the edge of a comfort zone, and there's always space for a new chapter. So it's be kind to yourself and start believing in yourself again. It doesn't matter what stage you are in your life. I think that's really, really important. Is you know, be your own champion and your own cheerleader, because, you know, once you start doing that, other people start going, oh, blimey, look at her. So that's the first one. I think in terms of the eating and the food and that side of things, I think I've got 2 big tips, 2 tips really. First one is, even if you can't immediately embark on something like HBD, just take small steps to eat better, you know, and every day. And the idea of the 5 hours between meals, take that on board. It's the little tiny incremental steps that can lead long term to really big change. It doesn't have to be anything hugely dramatic, you know. And I think we all get so overwhelmed. You know, it's the whole New Year's Day thing where, oh God, I'm going to do all these radical changes in my life, and then you can't sustain them. Just make the little changes and watch the rest. The magic will unfurl from there. So I think that's a really important thing to remember and hang on to. And the third thing is, cooking wise, if you don't do anything else, go out and get a load of fresh herbs and put them on your windowsill, and go and get a bowl of lemons and have some really good olive oil, and just go from there. Because with those bits and bobs and some garlic, you can suddenly then, you know, you start feeling that you're in the Mediterranean and you want to eat a bit more healthily. Do you know what I mean? Once you've got some lovely basil, you think, oh, what am I going to do with that? And then you'll automatically go and choose the tomatoes or the fish. You know, so those are the things I would say. That's what I do.
Oh, I love it. And actually, it reminds me of Jamie Oliver when he first started doing all his cooking, and he was in that kitchen and on TV, and he always had that windowsill of herbs outside. And it was, you know, it was just great. And he just used to plonk things on it, and he just made cooking so much sort of simple and easy for the individual. But listen, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I can't wait to see you again in person. And just before we leave, can you tell everybody where they can find you in the book?
Where they can find me and the book. So they can find me. I'm on Instagram, and I'm Lizzie.HBDfoodie. And they can find the books either on Amazon, or they can find them at Waterstones, and actually small independent bookshops as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. It's been so lovely chatting to you, and I can't wait to go through your cookery book again. Thank you, Lizzie.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so lovely to see you. Take care.